Hey friends, welcome to the channel. Bob here. I wanted to do a follow-up video on my Pantheon video that I did a couple of days ago, just talking about some various things. There's quite a lot of comments on the video, so I thought I would kind of do an update, like a follow-up kind of thing, and try to expand upon my thoughts, and also trying to use logic rather than emotion, which I think is the most important thing. I think that's kind of where we are with everything at the moment, where everything is just far too emotional. You know, you say something negative about a thing, and people who are too overly emotionally invested in it come out of the woodwork. And the two things I think that are the most annoying, I mean, first of all, I think is people encouraging other people to spend their money on something, just to see if you like it or not, or just to support the project. This was something that we had with other indie MMOs as well, where there were people telling people to buy and subscribe to the game just to support it, even if you weren't going to play it at the moment. And there's been some similar comments here on the previous video that I did. I kind of find that like bad form, really. I mean, someone said, "Oh, if you can't afford $40 for a game, then you shouldn't be gaming," and that's, yeah, I didn't find that a particularly nice thing, really. Not a particularly good attitude. I think the thing is that, you know, you can afford to spend $40 on a game, maybe, but maybe not that often, you know. And so someone encouraging you to spend that $40 on a game that you might like is just a nonsense, you know. And yeah, I find that sort of stuff quite sad. But there you go. That's kind of what rabid fanboys are like, you know. They're quite happy for you to spend their money on a project which is really benefiting them, essentially, because they're the ones who are either emotionally or financially overtly invested in the game. That was the kind of the outcome from that. The other thing as well, I think, is that where people kind of willingly either misrepresent or willingly kind of just filter out what they don't want to hear, and just listen to the bits that kind of trigger them, if you know what I mean. I mean, anyone who looks at my channel even briefly will see that I'm a classic MMO player, and my subscribers and and people that watch the videos are classic MMO players. But you'll get people that say, "Oh well, this game is old school or classic, so it's obviously not for you," and that's obviously like a pretty cheap kind of like a straw man, really. As I said, just a quick cursory glance at the channel will show that that's not the case. And indeed, I'll say, apart from New World, my experience with modern MMOs is incredibly limited. I used to try them, but didn't really play them for very long, and then kind of stopped playing them. So yeah, that's another thing, you know, where people kind of willingly misrepresent kind of, I guess, who you are and not what you're doing, and the games that you play. When actually, the funny thing is when you listen to a lot of them talking, who go on about old school and classic, it's clear that they're not familiar really with the games at all, if they even played them. I mean, someone left a comment about Pantheon saying it basically it was the same experience as what I had 20 years ago when I was playing EverQuest, and I think it was something that they remember the experience kind of evoking similar similar feelings to playing EverQuest 20 years ago. And that the thing I got from that was that this person has not really played EverQuest for that long ago. It's those memories, and those memories were a long time ago. And the key thing here, I think, what people seem to just miss purposely, is that you can play EverQuest Classic now very accurately on Project 1999. It's not perfect, you know. There have been some changes in regards to like FTE and raid mobs and that kind of thing, but essentially from a gameplay point of view, it's very accurate. And I don't seem to realise that many of us have done that. Like before these classic indie MMOs came along, that's what we were playing, and we can log in now. And indeed, I logged into P99 a little while ago and logged into my Ogre Warrior, so we can actually compare. Like we don't have memories from 20 years ago. We can actually sit here and compare them side by side if we wanted to. Now, none of that means that you should compare, or that what Pantheon is doing is wrong, or it's a bad game, or whatever it may be. None of us are suggesting that. The issue here is that we're being sold something, and there are players out there trying to convince other players of something, and it's not the case. And what they don't seem to realise is that we can actually test it and check You know, it's if you go and play, if you haven't played EverQuest Classic for however many years, go to the P99 website, get it up and running, and play it. And I find it difficult, and the only people who could play that and then play this and say that there's any similarity, other than the fact that, you know, you've got a dude in front of you running around and it's an MMO, then, you know, I mean, this is different from EverQuest is, as EverQuest is different from, I don't know, Guild Wars 2 or whatever. You know, they're just completely, the experience and the philosophy and the spirit behind the design of the game is completely different. I'm going to do, yeah, I'm going to see some gameplay in a minute, but not a huge amount. It's just kind of just really like a follow up, trying to use logic rather than anything else. And when I talk about kind of spirit and the philosophy of the game, so the EverQuest Classic design philosophy, when you play it, you realise it was very open ended. There were, in fact, I would say there were almost no barriers in the way for you to go out and experience the game in a way that you wanted to, apart from buying food and drink from a vendor, essentially. I mean, when you play Classic EverQuest, that's all you need to do. Buy a stack of food and a stack of drink, and out you go. And there are literally no barriers to your gameplay experience, apart from the obvious one, which is your level, and that's obviously what the game is about. So that's an organic barrier. And dying. There's a punishment for that. You know, that's an organic process of you going out and fighting mobs. You're going to die at some point. What these games are doing are putting many other barriers in the way that just didn't exist in those games. And having a gameplay loop that's different from EverQuest, for example, is not a problem in and of itself. It's really how it's implemented. Having a crafting system or a gathering system is not a problem, even though EverQuest didn't have it. Who cares? You know, it's a new system. It's more how it's implemented. So when I talk about the spirit and philosophy, I mean, including a gathering and crafting system where your gathering and crafting level is tied to your character level, so you have to go out and level your character before you can craft, is not in the spirit of EverQuest and the way that the game was designed. Apparently at some point in the future, I'm not sure if it's true, but someone said they're only going to allow a character to have one gathering and one crafting skill. That sort of design is not in the spirit of EverQuest. And I'm using EverQuest as an example because that's the example that some people were using in comments. It's not in that spirit at all, essentially. You know, it really is not. From a barrier, from like a barrier gameplay point of view, I would say that Pantheon is probably a bit less egregious than say Ember's Drift, for example, but it still has similar issues in the sense that what you're looking for is an experience where you're almost like in EverQuest, for example, you do some running. You know, I might have said in a stream that my wife used to laugh and say, you know, whenever I look at the screen, all you're doing is running, and that's true to a certain extent. But with EverQuest, the running that you do essentially is to get to your leveling point, and when you're there, it's kind of all gameplay. When you start off leveling in EverQuest, actually, it's a very smooth transition. Moving out from the starter area mobs are what you need, then you move out to the next zone and the mobs in that area are mobs that you need to level, and so on and so forth. It's only really when you get to a certain level and you're travelling to different areas that you're actually doing a lot of running. But it's all gameplay and there are no barriers, assuming you bought yourself food and drink. You know, there are no barriers to gameplay, whereas these games, the modern indie MMO games, classic MMOs, are putting up so many barriers in the way, and the design philosophy is almost like anti-fun and anti-gaming, as opposed to comparing it to the design philosophy like of EverQuest, for example. And it's not like this wasn't something that the EverQuest developers knew about. And when I talk about the open-ended design, I mean, when you look at certain classes where players develop skills to a point, they developed skills and they learnt the game to a point where they could maybe go into a dungeon and solo mobs that the developers didn't think that someone would be able to. And this was going on through Classic and through Cunark and through Velius. When we got to Velius, it wasn't like the developers patched all this stuff out. You know, they didn't patch out the fact that a level 1 character can wear a fungi tunic, for example. You know, if it was me and I was sitting here, I was watching this, I would be thinking, well, this is amazing, actually. And actually, if I start nerfing stuff to stop players doing that, it's kind of removing some of that kind of emergent, random, amazing experience that players have. Like if an enchanter works his way up to a point where he can go into some of the dungeons and run around and solo names and stuff, I don't care about that. Some of the most amazing things I've seen in EverQuest on P99 are some enchanters, and I think necromancers as well, going into the plane of fear and plane of hate and soloing it, and I just think as a developer, if I was looking at that and I saw it and I thought to myself, well, it wasn't intended for someone to solo a plane, but how amazing is it that they've worked out how to do it, and like if I stop them doing it, what am I saying about how design philosophy, we've given them the tools and we've given them this sandbox to play in, and when they go out and they play in it and they do things that we didn't expect, then we're kind of punishing them for it, we're not rewarding them. And I think that seems to be a real philosophy of many of these current indie MMOs that I've played, is that the philosophy is to, rather than about freedom and giving players scope to push the boundaries and see what they can do, it's about stopping them doing it. It's about creating not just a generic experience, but creating an experience that is it's very like corridor. It's like a corridor shooter. You can't go off that way or that way. We don't want you to do that. We want you to follow this path. It's very it's just a routine design, I think, as opposed to like creating a zone and then creating a character with abilities, and rather than looking at it and saying, okay, well, this ability might be allow the characters to do that in this dungeon, we don't want them to do that. Instead of doing that, the design was very open and free, and it was, here's your abilities, here's the dungeon. We've designed a dungeon to be challenging. If you can go in there and do it, then more props to you. That's amazing. That's the way I see it anyway. But I think nowadays it seems to be, and the thing is as well, it seems as though a lot of players feel that way. Well, a lot of players, well, some of the players that come on and leave comments anyway, feel that way. And they're players who just don't understand EverQuest or its design, or they've never played it. So essentially what they're doing is they're saying that this experience in Pantheon is the same as an old school or classic MMO, but it sounds like they've got no experience of playing a classic MMO, because this sort of design is not how it was. We wouldn't have all these restrictions and barriers in EverQuest back in the day. And you can prove that by just going and installing P99 and playing it. Not everyone could do it. This is something, I also think there's like a jealousy thing as well. Someone sees someone doing something and they don't like it because they can't do it or experience it, so they have to ruin it for everyone else. I've seen that quite a lot as well in the indie MMO scene. Players who can't do something and they just don't want someone else to do it, and they fall back on the classic thing. Whereas, you need a group. That's what classic games are like. Well, no, they weren't, because there were classes that could solo content that was meant for groups. So you're clearly wrong. Yes, you could socialise, and it's better to do that, and maybe your experience will be better. But the developers didn't stop players, whether they were solo or duo or whatever it was, from attempting stuff and doing it. And I kind of feel that that's kind of where we are. These developers are stopping it. They're attempting to restrict players in what they can do, and that's just not what classic MMO design was like. Ultra Online wasn't like it. If you worked hard enough, eventually you could walk around with an army of dragons, tame dragons, and just smeg everything. Asheron's Call wasn't like it. These games just were not like that. And anyone who's trying to convince you that they were, like, so you have to be in a group, you have to do this, you have to do that. The reason that they're going to change, what was it I was looking at? The reason that they're going to change it so that an individual character can only have one gathering and one crafting skill is because that's how it was, and that makes it social. No, it doesn't. The classic MMOs didn't have these mechanics, and they were perfectly fine and successful, and they're still the best MMOs to date. So I just wanted to break that myth for people who have maybe played EverQuest and have heard about classic MMO, indie classic MMOs, and they're hearing people saying how the experience is just exactly the same as it was. Maybe it is from a nostalgia point of view when you remember it, but if you actually play EverQuest and you look at it logically, it's not. And that's not a problem. If Pantheon or Monsters Memories or Embers Drift or whatever want to do something new, that's fine. But I do find it really annoying when people are being sold something that they've got to spend money on, and what they're being missold it essentially. And there are players out there who are, you know, these many of the people who left. I read through the comments on the previous video, and many of the people that left comments, it's clear that they're just ignorant of classic MMOs, but they're trying to give the impression that, you know, they've got their classic MMO or old school MMO badge of honour. But if they did have, and if they were remembering their experiences accurately, or they'd played one of these MMOs, which you still can on emulated servers, then they would realise that's not the case. And I come to the conclusion with some of them where I'm not even quite sure that they ever played a classic MMO. Particularly when someone goes, "Oh, I've played all of them, bro, lol." You know, that's a red flag. That is, for someone who's probably never played one before. But the issue that I have, as I said, is people coming to my videos and watching them, and buying a game based on what I'm saying. And I would never say to someone, just buy a game just to try it or just to support it. That's a pretty garbage thing to do, when that $40 might be the game that they buy for the month or for the quarter or whatever it may be. You know, some people are just not as well off as you are or I am. That's life. And that was the key thing I took away from it, really, like from the thing in general. You know, it's like, I mean, I actually like Pantheon as a game. I don't dislike it, but to say it's not a template design at the moment, or it's not horribly generic, or that the design is following in the spirit of EverQuest, those things are just not true. You know, those things are just not true. It is generic. It very much feels like a template that we've seen half a dozen times before. And many of the decisions for the design are not in the free spirit of EverQuest. And all of that is fine, by the way. That's not a criticism. It's just pointing out facts, essentially. So what I'm going to do for the second part of the video is to show you the issues I have with gathering. So I've been standing up here now for nearly 20 minutes waffling. I'm not sure what the spawn timers are on things, but there's a big area of land here, for example. Now bearing in mind, what I didn't point out in the previous video was that you have to look at this from a new player's perspective. You can't be a veteran of 500 hours and go, "Oh yeah, it's not a problem." You know, that's not how it works for a game to be successful. You have to look at it from an early access player who's coming in and is experiencing it for the first time, and they've got to decide within a short period of time whether they want to invest time in it. You've got to look at it from that point of view. And this is completely fair. As you see, I've been standing here for 20 minutes. I haven't run around and cleared all the nodes first. There's a big area of land here. Over here, there's like a camp where the dreaded shitty chevron mobs are. Over here, there's some no-go mobs, unless you're in a group. Let's wait for all the people to go. It's a group game. Over here, if you follow this area down there and go over there, there's the town. You've got a water section over there. You've got a water area here as well, with a cliff face. It goes right over here, right along here, and it goes over there. And then you run up there. You go to you get up there to the what area is it? The Dialogue area, which is what the character I currently got. And then it comes down here. There's a load of area over here as well. So this is quite a big area, and this is like a fairly newbie area. It's quite near the town. So one thing you might notice, first of all, is that apart from one guy, I think, near the beginning of the video, I haven't seen anyone else running around here, and neither of you. Can you see any nodes? No. So you have to bear in mind, this is a newbie area, and if this game's going to be successful, generally you'll find that there needs to be quite a lot of players playing it and paying for it and paying a subscription. So this is actual real-time testing here to show you that people who are saying that I was wrong about nodes are talking bullshit. And bearing in mind what I said, I'll repeat myself, you've got to look at this from a new player experience. I did some polls a little while ago asking players some questions. One of them was, when you start playing a new MMO, how long are you giving it before you just go, yeah, this is not for me? And many people are hardly giving it any time whatsoever. You know, we've reached a point now where people are trying MMOs and they're dropping them because they've seen it all before, essentially. So there's no cheating here. As I said, we've been standing here for 20 minutes roughly. If things haven't spawned in 20 minutes, if you think I've come along and chopped them all down, then that's a problem in itself. But as I said, this is an area that could accommodate, I don't know, like if the server's busy, you could have like 50, 100, maybe hundreds of players here. Anyone who remembers the Embers, I mean, even though there's no one playing that game anymore, if anyone who remembers the Embers Adrift opening, I think they had like over 2,000 people on the server when it first went kind of out of alpha or early access or whatever. So there could be a lot of people running around here, and many of the other thing that people used is that, oh well, you don't have to gather and craft, just you don't have to do it, but it's a main part of the gameplay loop. And the thing is, they don't seem to think that actually people want to do it. Maybe, oh, the developers have put time into developing this system, but I'm not going to do it because, well, why should I? Well, because people want to. So if you say it's early access and you've got a load of people running around here, and some of them want to gather and craft, God forbid, because it's a system in the game, can you see how it would work? And I'm not just going to stand here. I'm going to cover some distance. What I'm going to do is, so I know that some jute spawns here. I've been here for 21 minutes, and before I got here about 10 minutes before, just to set things up for the video. I didn't gather it actually from here. It wasn't here when I arrived, and it still hasn't spawned. So we're talking over 30 minutes now, and I don't know when it was picked up actually either. So over 30 minutes, and it could be 40 minutes for all we know. The jute has not respawned. So look at all this open area. So we're looking for jute, for some iron ore type stuff, or we're looking for some food, or we're looking for some plant type things, or we're looking for some trees actually. I'll point the trees out if we find one. Do you see the issue? So where are all of the nodes? Over here looks like a good place, logical place maybe for some metal ore, and something does spawn here. But I checked this before I came, and this would now be 32 minutes ago, and it still hasn't respawned. Maybe that respawned and someone else took it and we didn't see them, but the jute didn't, because we've been standing exactly where it respawns, and I stood there on purpose. So you could have quite a lot of newbies running around here wanting to gather, maybe to do the quest or whatever it may be, and we have not come across one node so far. Now, someone might say that's only a small area, you know, it's a huge map. Well, actually no, this is in the context of people running around collecting nodes, this is actually quite a big area. Right, there's a jute node just there. I'll go up here again, like across. Actually, what I also wanted to say as well is that rather than being someone who's moaning and not coming up with any ideas, like, why not have logical immersion-based areas where you go and gather stuff? So why not have mines that are full of nodes, and you can go there and there are some mobs that you can kill and whatever, just so it feels like more immersive. What about forests? Just create a big forest zone where people can just go and chop wood. I don't think these guys are aggro. No. I just want to check to see if that's a node there. I don't think it is. I think it's just a bush. Oh, there's some herbs. So that's our second node. Bearing in mind, I think I've seen 2 people so far. So there's not hordes of people collecting these nodes. And from a spawn point of view, we've been, we were still standing in that place. I was standing in that place for over 30 minutes, and that jute had not respawned. And that person that ran past with a torch at the beginning didn't pick them up because I was looking at where they were. So there's one. That's the 3rd node. So in the context of the fact that this is a newbie area, and there'll be lots of lots of newbies running around here. I'll go up there in a sec. We'll just go down here. There are hardly any nodes, and the fact of the matter is that despite what people are trying to tell you, in this area, as it is, even if all the nodes were spawned, there are still not many. It would still not be anywhere near enough for people to have a nice gathering experience. There's one over there which is that's tier 2 ore, so that's 4 nodes so far. But I mean, do you see what I mean? You know, it's clearly the information that people were leaving in comments is just incorrect, and they just want you to spend money on the game. They want you to have a falsely positive idea of what you're being sold, not falsely positive idea of the game. Because as I said, I like some of the elements about the game. I'm talking about what you're being sold and what's being marketed to you. So this area up here is, if anyone watching this thinks that this is enough nodes, and believe me, as I said, if all the nodes were spawned, there would still only be a handful of each. If anyone thinks this is acceptable when this game comes out, and there could be hundreds of people running around, then that's fine. Now, I accept that when a new MMO comes out, you know, it never works as it should, obviously, because there's more people bundled into a starter area than you would need. But this is the start. This area here is a starter area for the Dire Lords. So there could be a lot of people here when the game goes live. There's a jute plant. There's one just around the corner there as well. So we've seen, for the area that we've covered, we've seen 6 nodes in total so far. I know that sometimes a couple of iron ones spawn over here, but they're not here. This guy could have picked them up, but that's no excuse, because what about everyone else that's playing? What about everyone else that wants to try to do the newbie quest? What about everyone else that wants to try to interact with the gathering and crafting, because that's what they like doing? They're going to log out because their experience is going to be rubbish, and they've got no chance of interacting. There's one just there, look. They've got no chance of interacting with the gameplay loop. I haven't seen any trees at all yet. No apple or maple trees to chop. We'll go up here, and as you can see, the server is really just dead. I mean, I looked at the Who thing, and there's about 25 people playing. There's one there, look, there's a vegetable one. But that's it there. What we got down here? So this is real time testing with not many people playing the game, and this is the situation. And this is people trying to tell you that there are nodes everywhere, like there are not. There are other areas of the map, of course, but the situation is very much the same. I could go to a different part of the map. Maybe you could go to the section where you run across the bridge and you're in a slightly higher level area. It's exactly the same. Yes, there are obviously nodes, but this is nowhere near enough to accommodate even a reasonable number of people coming in and playing the game. I mean, this wouldn't even be acceptable 6 months down the line, you know, where maybe things have quietened down a bit. As you can see, there's hardly any. There are hardly any. And actually, to increase, like someone pointed out to me, and they were right, I didn't mention it before, is that to increase your, even like fairly early game, to increase your skills in crafting, you need so many more. You need so many of the resources to actually do that, that I think that gatherers and crafters, people who like that gameplay loop, would stop playing this game pretty quickly. And they wouldn't return, as I said. You know, people are dropping MMOs quicker than they ever were, and they're not coming back. And there are a number of games that are. That's the Casper one that we've already counted. Yeah, I mean, as I said before, like even if all of those were spawned in this area that we run around in, there's some herbs there, it would still not be anywhere near enough. Now, I will play early access. And if in early access we play the game and they've got something in place for this, maybe there are a lot more nodes. Maybe the nodes are instants, like they are on Brighter Shores, which is a game that I recently tried, which is a new MMO by the RuneScape guy. Then yeah, I'll do a video and I'll say they've fixed the problem. You know, if you enjoy gathering and crafting, then there's a tree there and there's some ore there and there's a jute there. There's a jute there. No one gets those because chevrons, obviously. You know, gathering is generally a solo activity, so I imagine people don't really go and pick those up much. We'll actually head back to town as well, go around this area, just because there's a maple tree there. So as you can say, I would say that we've probably seen overall 12 to 15 nodes in total in a quite a big area of land, and it's also a fairly big area of newbie land when you first start the game. And also, as you can see, there is hardly anyone running around, and so I don't know what to tell you. You know, this is proof of the situation, in that people trying to tell you there's some vegetables over there, people trying to tell you that there are loads of nodes everywhere, it can't even really support a few players, let alone, you know, the sort of numbers that you might get if the game comes out, and if people decide to try it. And that's it. I'm just going to run back to I'm just going to head back to the town now. And some people, I mean, literally, some people in the comments were saying, you can see nodes everywhere. There's loads of them. I mean, this is the newbie yard, and there's nothing here. I mean, I tell you what, apart from the fact that if the game goes into early access and they've fixed it, I will definitely do a video and say they've fixed it. You know, it's a better experience. But I think, like, even if someone points out to me a quote from developers that say, "Oh, the gathering loop is actually not something that we're really interested in. It's kind of just there to accommodate the loop," then I will go, "Yeah, fine, okay, fine. It's not important, doesn't matter." But it seems important, particularly when you take into account the newbie quests are actually tied to it. Now, we've actually run further than I was planning on doing, but I mean, we haven't now. I don't think we've seen a node now. There's one over there. So I think that was the first node. Looking at, I did keep an eye on the timer. I think that's the first node we've seen for about 3 or so minutes running around. And there's another little section down here. So what I was saying about nodes and spawns, etc., and whatnot, and gathering and stuff, I think this video, unless you think that I'm cheating in some way and I've managed to turn off all the nodes or whatever, I think this kind of video proves a point. I just think that people talking about this stuff with regards to old school and classic just have no experience with an old school or classic game from a design and a spirit and a philosophical point of view, how it was approached. And I also think that people talking about nodes and stuff and that there's loads of them, it's not a problem. Again, I wonder if they've even played the game. And you know, these things are an issue, right? Because I mean, I was quite surprised, but a number of you have said to me over the last 6 months or so that you paid for Pantheon back in like years ago, but you've never tried it. You just could never be bothered to download it and try it. So you've paid for something and you're not even willing to try it out. That is a problem. If I was developers, I would think about that and think about why is that happening. Yeah, some of it is going to be the fact that there were development problems, and I guess Pantheon became a bit of a meme, and so people just thought, oh well, whatever. But a lot of it is people looking at the game, looking at the gameplay, looking at the restrictions and the roadblocks and whatever it may be, and deciding that this is just not. I played this before. I played this game before. I don't want to invest any more time in it. And so I just think that from a business point of view, if it was me, you know, I would want to say, you know, we need to do something about it. You know, we need to be a bit more clever in our design and original in our thinking. There is a jute plant. Yeah, I mean, if anyone thinks that for the ground we've covered and for the ground that we can see just around us, if anyone thinks that this is acceptable for a game that has got like a gathering and a crafting system in it, then I think that you're just kidding yourself. It really is. There's nothing here. Anyway, there we go. I would have finished the video with what I've already said, is that Pantheon is not a bad game. I think combat is enjoyable, but it really is nothing like EverQuest. It's its own thing, and that's fine. But it's got serious issues, and it's got the same issues that other MMOs that we've played have got, and that is that we're spending more time running around, not interacting with the game, than we are actually playing it. And it's a problem. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.